going to ask one of our committee members, Andrew Moffat, to introduce our next speaker. Andrew.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great privilege to introduce the next speaker today, His Serene Highness, Prince Leo von Hohenberg von Habsburg, the great-grandson of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his consort, who were both brutally murdered by Serbian terrorists in June 1914. That event was the spark that ignited World War I, which wrecked Europe and in which my very own father happened to fight. As an aside, I can't but help wondering, since it was the officer class that suffered the greatest loss of life during that conflict, what happened to their heirs today, who have been remarkably invisible and silent as Europe enters its greatest and most dire existential crisis in its long history. To return, His Serene Highness is a committed Christian and an officer of the Austrian Army Reserve. Speaking to a significant invited audience at his family's Schloss, Artstetten, in Lower Austria, His Highness made a superb speech on safeguarding our beliefs, norms, and freedoms from the liberal left global agenda and its establishment as the basis for a fulfilling, peaceful life for the next generation. Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome for one of Europe's courageous leaders, His Serene Highness, Prince Leo von Hohenberg von Habsburg.
Thank you, Andrew, for these beautiful words. I'm very honored to speak here today and to be invited on all these PhDs and professors. And you see, I'm here only due to an accident of my birth. The assassination of my great-grandfather heralded the first catastrophe of the 20th century, which was preceded by a wave of moral confusion and ultimately enthusiasm for war, not unlike our current situation. I'm not a historian, I'm not a politician, I'm not a philosopher, but I am, however, a father, a husband, an officer of the Austrian Reserve, and a Christian, and I feel a duty to do whatever I can in the service of freedom and peace. Just like all of you here, I want to safeguard our beliefs, norms, and freedoms, which are and always have been the foundation of our Christian civilization. The destruction of national identity through mass migration, the undermining of the family unit, the erosion of religion and traditions, the governmental overreach, the implementation of complete surveillance systems, and the centralization of power and dependency are being sold to us as progressive evolution, but are actually the destruction of the Western civilization. But before I turn everybody here to drugs, alcohol, and despair, which we heard enough from, let's recall Sun Tzu, who said, "Know your enemy and know yourself. In 100 battles, you will never be defeated." We are currently experiencing, to understand the enemy, a war of a different kind. And our enemy is as old as time itself. This war is not fought with weapons like in the Ukraine or in the Middle East, but is a much deeper war. It's a spiritual war. It is a war over the public and political mind. And it is fought with all the might and financial power of big international organizations and their so-called NGOs. Globally centralized uniformity is the aim. And only those who conform are allowed to join and dip into the taxpayers' money pot. By redefining concepts and selecting wording, by changing norms through universal repetition like mantras in media, film, and television, through changing school curriculums, selective manipulating of data now with AI, and the use of other subtle techniques, our enemy influences opinions, shifts cultural identities, destroys our social fabric, edits our voting behavior, and frightens us with new world ideologies into a state of oblivious submission. The technocrats in a small European country, and unfortunately your government here, have announced the need of the also convenient and seemingly insignificant digital IDs, the ultimate tool of a totalitarian state. What tactics did the enemy use to get us here? Well, it always starts with a call for tolerance. First, we are asked to tolerate anomalies, then we promote them in a show of civilized, unbiased maturity. In the next step, we legalize them and even celebrate them, until by the end we are persecuted when we still call them by their true name. As Dostoevsky rightfully said, tolerance will reach a level that intelligent people will be banned from thinking so as not to offend the imbeciles. But if you're tolerant for everything, you stand for nothing and can be therefore manipulated into anything, and that is where we're going. Instead, let us remind ourselves who we are, where we come from. Let us think of the core values of our civilization, for therein lies victory. You see, the problem is that most people misunderstand tolerance completely. You know, I think Jesus didn't eat with sinners because he wanted to appear tolerant, inclusive, and accepting. He ate with them to call them to change to a fruitful life with him. His call is for transformation of life, not the affirmation of a utopic ideology. It's about conversion to all that is good, truthful, and beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, our obligation to the next generation is to generate the courage, accept the responsibility to save normality. We must embrace our tradition and values. Our tradition is to have the utmost respect for God, humanity, and our forefathers. We cannot wallow in the past. Instead, we must accept our responsibility for the future by remembering the lessons of the past. The most obvious and essential such lesson is the cost of war, an undeniably ineffective way of dealing with conflict that we resort to again and again and again, vowing that every time will be the last. A similar lesson is that all attempts at instating coercive forms of government in the name of security and some ideology disguised as leadership have consistently resulted in misery, decimation, and loss of liberty. Take the current trend of global organizations calling their uncontrolled power governance, for example. These organizations are heavily influenced by global conglomerates and their financiers, undemocratically imposing their interests and globalist utopias by instating laws which were never voted for, nor in the interest of their sovereign, the people. Historically, supranational, overreaching, authoritarian governance has always failed because of the tendency to overlook the identities of the nations it seeks to govern. But if as a nation you do not know and you do not defend what makes you unique and what you stand for, somebody else will. And that's where we're going. Know your enemy, know yourself. The nation-state format is the natural form of human organization, with not only cooperation between nations, but the precise safeguarding of the definition and identity of each individual nation. Let us not confuse centralization of power with international cooperation. Centralized power is not only undemocratic, it is dangerous. It allows, for instance, for warmongering propaganda repeated verbatim by sheepishly submissive heads of state across an entire continent. This is the most recent manifestation of globalist authoritarianism. A truly supranational government should restrict itself solely to supranational matters, ensuring the mandate of the people over the imposition of artificial agendas, be they financial, social, or political. In other words, bottom up, not top down. Unfortunately, European organizations and institutions only pay lip service to supranational principles through the short-sighted prism of legislative periods. Legal and regulatory action becomes the sole objective. The emergency laws, for example, voted in by the World Health Organization, or more recently, the digital ID requirements, and the unrelenting push by European leaders for the creation of a European army in preparation of an impending war against Russia, are all examples of dictatorial governments. Power needs control. We are experiencing the concerted breakdown of national identity and personal freedoms, and are currently being encouraged to dismiss every belief, custom, and norm and replace them with a new truth. We obviously have not learned from history. I can think of a few times in our recent history when the stubborn imposition of ideology against all truth has resulted in unspeakable suffering and offense to God. So, how can we respect our forefathers, protect our civilization from the overreach of utopian organizations, guarantee a bright and peaceful future, and so defeat our enemy 100 times? Now that we understand the operational environment, it is up to us to operate effectively against this enemy we are facing. And here, as a military man, I see 4 areas of combat. The first and all-encompassing of these is the spiritual one. God gave us the ability to turn our thoughts into deeds. From deeds come habits, and habits shape our life and future. As it is now, we are collectively being hypnotized into a state of fear of war. We must be careful where we choose to put our thoughts collectively, because they shape our future and our society. God has given each of us moral vigilance, the ability and freedom to think, to train our mind, to focus on all that is righteous, true, and God-given. We are free not to dwell in warmongering propaganda. Secondly, we have the intellectual area of combat. Divine freedom of thought protects us from the tyrannical imposition of ideologies. Our Christian heritage is designed to protect us from misguidance. We are divinely programmed to know that there are absolute truths, and that personal truths are opinion, not fact, and mostly are merely a distortion of the truth. The most blatant example of this distortion we are being subjected to is language. In the last 15 years, we have witnessed a rapid change in the way things are called. And the new vocabulary uses euphemisms to distort the truth. For example, gender-affirming healthcare, reproductive healthcare, then safeguarding from misinformation and threats to democracy. We've heard it all. And my personal favorite, pregnant person. A different choice of wording will change your perception of a concept. It will change your thoughts and your action. The insistent repetition of such nonsensical concept is the hallmark of a propagandist manipulation. Therefore, we must sharpen our intellect to fight against these mind games. Do not underestimate your God-given sense for truth. If something smells fishy, it probably is. So, be attentive to words, to what you choose to listen to, and what you read. Be aware of how you express your thoughts. Be selective and conscientious of your vocabulary. And then, of course, a reasonable person exercises healthy skepticism to all forms of media and has the courage to form independent views regarding current events by following your God-given compass. It is easier to obey than to think. So, discipline yourself to respectfully question authority and opinions of so-called experts. And condition your mind to think outside the mainstream narrative. Question trends. Don't be afraid to be the black sheep. Remember that if you follow the herd, you will end up stepping in what it leaves behind. Our third field of combat is our emotions. Do not allow these trying times to make you feel like a powerless victim. Do not give in to feelings of insecurity or downright fear. Fear and convenience replace conscience. So actively fight the temptation to cocoon yourself into comforting passivity and compliance against your better judgment. Every silent shrug is a step towards capitulation. Know that fear is the mind killer. Anxiety leaves you defenseless and open to manipulation and control. Remember, if Christ is with you, who can be against you? And finally, we have the practical daily area of combat. This is a call to use whatever abilities you have and God-given talents you have and apply them in daily life to defeat the enemy. For example, make time to create a jour fixe with agreeing friends and family to talk about the current situation. Listen to, encourage each other, and work on finding ways to counteract the government overreach in your local area. Even the most conflict-shy among us can seek out opportunities to speak to others about all things and use our sense of what is right and just as a guide. Whether in a sympathetic environment such as the one here, or in a more contrarian one, our credibility and integrity, our inner moral fortitude, provide the most sincere and effective arguments. Do not be afraid to speak your mind, even if it's only within your immediate surroundings. You will be surprised how many people will agree with you. Though we cannot all be like Charlie Kirk, we can be sincere in every encounter. No matter how trivial, it is a divine opportunity. You never know what effect your words may have on another person. Pray that in your own insignificant way, the Holy Spirit can work through you and activate your talents. Have the courage to stand up and speak up. God will do the rest. We can change the collective consciousness. It may seem impossible of an individual to fight against the corruption of the collective mind. However, we can take back the power from anonymous organizations. Change happens when we refuse to quietly accept the omnipresent narrative and refuse to be conditioned by the worldly powers. Change starts. Change starts within yourself and the people around you. Never underestimate the power of your family. Focus on the things surrounding you and over which you do have control. If each of us changes what we can, it becomes a collective force to reckon with. Remember that faith, hope, and love forge a mighty strength. As Saint Teresa of Avila taught us, Christ has no body now but yours. No hands, no feet on earth but yours. Yours are the eyes through which he looks with compassion on this world. Yours are the feet with which he walks to do good. Yours are the hands through which he blesses all the world. Yours are the hands, yours are the feet, yours are the eyes. You are his body. Christ has no body now on earth but yours. Thank you.